Today marks a grand day for my adventures throughout Monster Hunter World. Absolute greatness has been accomplished finally, as I have succeeded in my goals fully for playing this game. All of the Elder Dragons in the game have been beaten with successful results and good completion times to boot for the majority of the bunch. I feel much better playing this game without players thinking they need to babysit me still, because I'm at a low level or not knowing as much about everything from having not played this grid like a sole ritualistic one-track gameplay. Don't keep going out of your way to help me when it hurts you. Let me do what I do, and you do what you do and we'll succeed. That's very easy to do, but not everyone wants to do that. It gets addressed, yet it still occasionally happens, like I can't be trusted with my own devices or trusted to have your back when you know I play better than any random you know, and likely better than your closest friends. I've seen players take this game so seriously that they disregard anybody trying to do well because they're not on their level, period, or can do the same things they can do. I understand enjoying the video game, but don't keep taking that away from other people because they're playing at their own pace that's comfortable to them, that brought them the success that they have, that's allowed them to stand right there alongside you for the same goal. End of story. The way that the game naturally is with creating builds and armor sets, people are able to do almost all of the jobs in a team-based setting by themselves. Thus, if another player has the same one-man army build, then success is guaranteed at a faster rate of progress, and that's all well and fine. My thing there is, why put down players that have strong build ideas also that they created even if they aren't as powerful as yours? It's what's successful for them that still manages to get the job done at an equally effective rate as what you're doing, even if it's not the same DPS drop. That's the question that does not have an answer to it, and it likely never will be answered, but it still needs to be pitched. Regarding my fan base, my fellow friendly online hunters, my critics, and the judgmental monster hunting elitists that haven't uninstalled this shit yet. Especially on GameFAQs, like I honestly give a shit what you think is right. I'll break it down for you with each accomplishment attained here since I started this personal project, so that it's not to be questioned in any way, shape, or form what I'm capable of accomplishing when I'm focused or playing consistently like any of you guys. I come and go as I please to every competitive gridiron, so long as there's an inviting atmosphere to seek to embrace. So, the Elder Dragon solo project that I originally created in 2018 was a very fun project I made from both a great positive experience with a new Monster Hunter player in a side gaming bet we had, as well as a series of past bad experiences I had long ago on this video game that led to my falling out with this trashy community at that time. The first time, when I first stopped playing Monster Hunter online and just moved away from it because I honestly thought this game was shit. I've met many more nice players since then that make the whole sentiment of playing and hunting more rewarding and more heartfelt. But there are some subtle memories that are still here when playing this game because there are people that are still around like that drove me away in the first place. Even few friendly players have picked up the habit of secretly shaming others in different means or in their tone or their general approach in conversation. I know who you are. You don't know who you are out there because you don't see yourselves in the way you act around other people, and how your attitude or disposition changes needlessly or selectively in circumstances or in mixed company. You don't see what it is I see all the time and what I hear and what I feel and how you're talking. And that's not even to this general community. That's to many other past communities that I've been a part of, which is how I'm able to actually get the experience to spot it. The objective here was to successfully defeat every known Elder Dragon that I can encounter in the video game of Monster Hunter World, as best as I'm humanly able to, based off of my own devices, knowledge of the video game, strategy, boss fighting mechanics, whatever the creature is itself, and their strengths and weaknesses. A lot about Monster Hunter I don't know as much as other players always playing, but I play the game generally like I do because I trust my senses and my skills always when I'm in the field. A lot of this game has tested me on a whole other level, that general one-on-ones from other video games on the competitive sense that I usually would do in an FPS or in other types of varying role-playing games could not do. The competitive scene here is a whole other concept of adaptation, adapting, intelligence, creativity, environmental awareness, and general quickness. Let's go down the listings of the Elder Dragons represented, starting with Zorah Magdaros, which is the largest Elder Dragon in the game, or the largest one that I've seen. According to my notes studied, he's likely the second largest Elder Dragon overall, next to this one I remember studying from the preceding Monster Hunter game entry called Serpent Dalamador, which is respectively of Monster Hunter 4, I think, if I remember that correctly. Anyway, regarding Zorah Magdaros, I hunted this one a couple of times since it came up in the side feed to test fighting large bosses. Very, very large bosses. As you can see, it's a very large one indeed. I really pay attention when it comes up because I don't really like the armor set around it, and I don't find any particular interest for the weapons, but I still try to pay attention when it's around because it helps me try and get a better time on huge boss fights. This was a hard hunt, but it was achievable with a lot of good dedication and a lot of patience. There's a lot of points you have to wait for in between the intervals in order to continue your attack processes. My initial time against Zorah Magdaros was about 38 minutes and a little bit of change. I want to say about 39 minutes altogether. I was using an Insect Glaive at the time during my earliest attempts, even by myself, and I still do use one to this day. I tightened up my response time and became more aware of my environmental surroundings to use for better effectiveness. In the end, I trimmed this down all the way to about 21 minutes and 14 seconds solid on a completion time, also this being in a solo run, and again also this being for using an Insect Glaive. This one was a tough battle here in its own right against Xenojiva due to not having fought Xeno before the point of the campaign's endgame. In addition to this, his tabs for investigation pursuits is very rare that they come up, so you have to basically keep an eye out in order for the Xeno quest to come up. They're going to come in normal high rank. There is no tempered, but there is arc tempered. And in addition to his size, he's a rather grind-worthy opponent and has a lot of varying splash damage based attacks that make it hard to solo start to finish without given difficulty from start to finish. The first time I tried this Elder Dragon, it was never completed a series of times. I want to easily 2 or 3 different times. There are a lot of times I died 2 times, like the whole way through I died constantly. Whereas there was one time where I did come very close, barring 1 or 2 instances where there was a death that I had stoked, but there was an uninvited random that also died the last death, which cost all 3 lives in the process one time. Then the next time after that, I did what I did. I did it in a private closed session after that. No sooner after that, it was like a couple hours later, when it came back into circulation later on that night in the early morning, to attempt to blow through it again. My best build setup for Insect Glaives, I did win that one with 2 deaths on the board at 21 minutes and 25 seconds with my best glaive build at that time, which was using the Nergigante Reaper. It was using Nergigante's Insect Glaive. It was at rarity 7, if not rarity 8 at that time. And then I also had my backup build for using Dodogama's lance thing. I can't remember what the name of it is, but also using Dodogama's blast lance. So basically it was about 21 minutes on that run. That was back in October 2018 when I originally did that. Several months later, as it came up, I slowly kept trying to study Xenojiva in order to get a better idea on his attack patterns, and also learning how his attack patterns play into his environment when he's both on the ground and in the air, in addition to his earthquake tremor attacks whenever he does his landing press when his body comes up on the ground, barring entering into a slightly enraged state if one of or more than one of his body limbs seem to have been broken. The last run I had on around April 2019, if not March, was upon getting back into Monster Hunter World. I then locked in a very fast time period of approximately 18 minutes 35 seconds, which here was impressive because this was a whole 2 to 3 minute difference from the first successful solo run I ever did against Xenojiva. This was also by Insect Glaive only. This was undergone by 1 death on the board. I'm sure I can place a better time, but I'm not waiting just for a couple of Xenojiva investigation builds to appear. There are other monsters to hunt and other adventures to seek to claim as my own. So, that's exactly what I aim to do. This was a trial and error to learn how to move and dodge him before learning how to dodge him better into my own attacks. My finishing times against Nergigante were usually around 18-minute markers by the time I could read his moves better without stopping to heal myself every other attack. My original best time against Nergigante centered somewhere around 15 minutes, and this was with my first Charge Blade build set outline when I first originally was using different outlines here in Monster Hunter World before I settled onto Insect Glaives. I was able to learn from a lot of how he attacks and use the Charge Blade correctly enough. This was the Nergigante Charge Blade, in order to actually fight Nergigante himself from all the past grinds against Nergigante. For that build, I ran more or less health boosts and a flinch resist at the time, so I felt that it was pretty good for what was an amateur Charge Blade set at that time in 2018. I decided to then attempt defeating Nergigante on regular tier here using Insect Glaives, as I was using them more. I was using them a lot more at this time, and I even had subtle variations of Insect Glaives to boot. But this process was not easy to set up. It then became easier the more I fought Nergi, and had studied his particular attack patterns, as well as his diving attack radius. The move in which he goes into the air actually has a larger radius than it appears, but it's all ground-based. If you jump up and try to do a dodge mechanic with the Insect Glaive upon the time of impact, you can actually evade it. But the window is very brief, so you have to be almost on cue. The glaive can actually bob and weave around a lot of this while still working in attacks as you dodge and evade. I had a lot of them after a while. I grinded up to right where the correct Dragon Glaive build, right to where the right Dragon Glaive build had burnt through the boss for a total of 8 minutes and 11 seconds as a very good finish time. Then I had tweaked with this performance in order to enhance the affinity length for the general Behemoth set, which seems to be the most aggressive Dragon Glaive, Insect Glaive hybrid build that can be created for the Insect Glaive family. For this thing here, I redid it yet again, and I was able to surpass my own time of 8 minutes and 11 seconds with a total of about a powerful 7 minutes and 39 second finish. Also, this was done with Insect Glaive only, and it ended up being a done deal for all intents and purposes. I couldn't have been more proud of myself for doing that, because I was able to take down Nergigante with a very, very strong finish time base Nergigante using just an Insect Glaive. Everybody in my listings honestly didn't think that much of Insect Glaives, but I proved a lot of them wrong in order to do this solo. You don't have to have support with an Insect Glaive build in order to be efficient with them. Also, there was a time I was also showing my friends on how to fight Elder Dragons originally when I fought Nergigante. I did this in the fastest time imaginable, and I was able to defeat him in a total of 6 minutes and 51 seconds. And I was highly shocked at this because this was even faster than my fastest time. And I'm sitting here wondering, how the hell did I beat my own record twice? And again, it just ended up being another blessing, and I ended up defeating him in, like I said, 6 minutes and 51 seconds, which, hell, sent history for myself even more again. And I beat him with the Insect Glaive. Whether or not I'll go back and do it again with a Charge Blade, I doubt it, but it's something I can definitely take to mind later on to challenge myself if I seek to implement said challenge. A challenging Elder Dragon every now and again, but originally Kushala was a pain in the ass to fight, as a number of my main Insect Glaive builds were all rendered highly ineffective for a good time working through all the generated wind pressure that comes off of Kushaladora's breathing cycles. As he keeps fighting, the wind keeps stacking here and there, whether or not he's blowing it or he's making it every time he wants to make a quick break away from battle into an aerial stance. I learned through constant losses against this guy how to improve a lot of my Insect Glaive performance offensively and defensively, which then did positively affect my results as time went on. I had to undergo a lot of losses, and I missed out on a lot of rewards and benefits from this particular dragon through many months in order to try and get my trade, but after a while I was able to eventually master some form of varied aerial combat using the Insect Glaive, and I was able to do a mix of ground and aerial both. Kushala forced me to try and make this particular adaptation in order to effectively continue using the Insect Glaive against him. This Elder Dragon harnesses predominant wind-based pressure, but it is manageable to some degree. My most known completion time was somewhere around 28 minutes last time that I had checked. The first few times I had fought him, it was around 20-25 minutes, 28 minutes at max. Once I created the proper aerial-based build, and then I was able to modify that into a ground-based variant using a couple of varying Insect Blades that can work against him. I was able to tighten down that time to around 24 minutes and 16 seconds. I then continued to study Kushaladora's habits and attack patterns through the Ancient Forest and Elder's Recess equally, and studied a more effective means of stunning him to keep him on the ground. The wind pressure effect given off by Dora's breathing over time is manageable to a degree, as you'll need to learn the ground glaive combos to keep consistent damage on Kushala after he's flashed out of the sky. The correct glaive can stack damage quickly on him when he's stunned. Aerial glaive combos will be ineffective against him at this point or at that time once the wind pressure stacks a second time in the same zone. If it stacks a different time in a different zone, then there is a chance, but the window will be increasingly slim. Also, I found out a rather clever trick to keep DPS stacking when not close to Kushala, as the Insect bug is key to this. Using a poisoned and or thunder Insect bug helped in gaining constant damage on him with the element advantage. I ran the hunt back through Elder's Recess and sealed the deal with my time of 13 minutes and 14 seconds, 25ths of 100, solidifying the run under 15 minutes perfectly and completing said fast time with another Insect Glaive build outline. So far from my revision through GameFAQs and Reddit, I might hold one of the cleanest times done on American servers for a speed run against the Steel Elder Dragon using only the Insect Glaive. Also, no deaths were accumulated in this, so all in all, I believe it was check and mate. Again, that was a time of 13:14. Here at Elder Dragon Teostra, this was easy work, to be honest. At first, no. Landing consistent hits against him as well as crit damage was rather hard when I had to worry about blast damage build-up sprinkled around the field, each time he internally ignited after a stun reset or series of hits against him. Him and Vaal were among the two easier Elder Dragons of the bunch in order to quickly figure out past the opening combative trick, or gimmick, that gives them the opening edge in battle, tempered and regular both. My original fastest time had circled around approximately 22 minutes, and many varying continued efforts and runs that generally centered around 20 minutes overall. It centered around here for the longest time. That did not change. The last opening session against Teostra was my returning game back to Monster Wonder World after a shit show elsewhere that I had left out for a time. In my first solo documentary completion process, that had ended at a time well over 20 minutes, and so this needed to be reduced heavily, thus my revision to the Xenodante Glaive build to help this along. Among that revision, I was able to get my most recent completion time down of Teostra to 13 minutes and 26 seconds. In addition, my first tempered hunt against tempered Teostra had ended at 26 minutes and 3 seconds, short of the 30-minute cap I set for myself, which also needed to be revised for better assessment. Here I then revised and upgraded the Xenodante build into the Red Empress build by rearranging a couple of jewels. Here, effectiveness has changed as my fastest revised time, also using said Insect Glaive, stood at 15 minutes and 58 seconds, and 0 deaths on the board, thankfully. And this effort I can be highly proud of for trying to take down a tempered Elder Dragon of this magnitude. Definitely the tougher battle of the latter between Teostra and Lunastra always as time goes on. Heat buildup was the main issue stopping me from effectively staying aggressive consistently, as my health was draining down faster than I could recover it to neutral points going further. The balance between a good setup and maintaining gradual heat resistance or management that stacks so slowly but assuredly as the heat intensifies was very difficult for this match. A general full armor set and weapon, both were tough to go by. I had to do a lot of studying for this one, because there were a lot of different ways that the kin set can work, but there are also different ways to approach it offensively before using the kin sect with Insect Glaive. Blast damage works from Kinsect, but cannot do a lot from blast damage based glaives. Ice damage is very good, but it varies between the Kinsect bug and the weapon. A poison Kinsect is useful, whereas a poison weapon is very powerless for anything beneficial. Two different things gotta feed off of and into each other like a circuit, but the right glaive has to work for the bug to follow. Nergigante's Insect Glaive in its final stage was among my first picks in an attempt at a build. At first, the Xenodante build that I created could not be used for both Lunastra and Teostra because there are too many things that had to be rearranged before it could actually work. Now, with the adjustments of the Empress gauntlets over Dante's gloves, as well as an improved handling on the Insect Glaive style, the exact same fire resistance build can now be used for both monsters at the same time, with only the selected charm needing to be switched off at an interval. So far my times, while rather lofty, seem to be moderately beneficial. Upon better revision, I know that the fastest recorded time was clocked in at 19 minutes and 54 seconds. This was base high rank Insect Glaive only. The revised Xenodante build, or Red Empress, then reduced said time past to 15 minutes and 7 seconds. This was also an Insect Glaive predominant build, and there were no deaths on the board at that time. As for Tempered Lunastra, none of those builds have yet to appear or set up in my weekly outline for them. So as much as I would like to test it on the highest plateau, short of Arc Tempered, which I still have yet to do on the back burner for obvious reasons, I have to just wait it out and wait till the time is right in order to test the same build setup on Tempered Plateau and see if I can cut it under the designated time registrations and get my own record going for Insect Glaive Tempered continuations.
Oh, Bubba been that happy.
Now, Kul Taroth. This is always a very fascinating documentation to revisit. Think about this, the only successful run ever done against Kul Taroth that I did from start to finish was the Arc-Tempered Taroth Siege run that awarded me numerous Siege exclusive weapons for the first time. The general timing in taking on a Kul Siege was rather indirect, as I've seen various previous sieges come to pass, but was not able to play them in the free time due to lack of players playing the siege at good times, pending unprepared situations, and much of my past inexperience, and the occasional lack of knowledge as to when they're happening so I can seek to actually do them. Again, this one came up suddenly, but I was surprised that I was really prepared for this occasion, as the siege was arc level as opposed to all the past normal sieges seen. As an effective team on that said Rage Siege run, and me being the only Insect Glaive player on the Taroth Siege server, this was accomplished at a solid 12 minutes and 55 seconds. Honestly, nothing else matters there, as impressive as this was, and how all that I had felt that night facing Kul Taroth was a mission, and it was a team effort that had succeeded as a direct result.
Yeah, that's like the first stage is no, last stage is hell yeah, do it. It's like James using everything to kill my last name.
Thank you.
I better say he ain't
Same,
dead
I
yet.
like a couple myself. Oh shit, we got that in 12 minutes. Alright.
Yeah, 4 minutes.
This takes me back. I remember first starting into this hunt when I was originally just an in-game event for a lot of players in the Monster Hunter World online community to spam outright just to learn the hunting mechanics for fighting Behemoth. A lot has changed since those months, to be honest. The mechanic layout of this whole boss fight is too complex for a solo run, but even then it's debatable right now. Between the tornadoes that comes from the Cherubis or Cherubidus casting, where he just basically sits there with a big blue thing on his face to summon the tornadoes, the comet consistency to keep intact when it falls into a pattern or it sporadically falls. This is between either the little meteor effect that happens when he falls in one or two places, or the meteorite in general that falls before we go into that that ecliptic meteorite effect, if I remember correctly. Then the body placing as the hunter, where you place yourself, how you place yourself, because where you place yourself makes a huge difference, because he could just randomly lunge at you and inflicts a huge amount of damage, or randomly claw you, which gives you a random bleeding effect, or he just randomly pulls thunder out of his ass somewhere. Then the whole ecliptic meteor one-hit KO attack that seems to be very well timed. You have a very good idea when it's likely going to happen, because it's either going to be off in the distance for a brief bit, it's going to happen after a meteorite effect, or when two other meteors that are on the field, the comets, take their positions in either odd end locations or in a ritualistic manner of about, I want to say, 1 or 2 minutes apart, if he summons the first one. When you do a huge amount of damage, or after 2 successful mounts, is when the ecliptic meteorite effect takes place. Then there's the general gaze effect that a player takes to hold him off long enough for the team to get any damage, as his focus is on the gaze holder. Only during this time period. It's a massive juggle. Being a melee-based player, that's not a common feat to attempt to do or think of trying to do solo, knowing the general height of danger that comes from this fight as the hunt is prolonged. It's a whole other level of skill that goes into soloing Behemoth that tests survival and speed both back-to-back to complete the quest line. This falls on the 0.01% margin mostly of monster hunting godhood. I'm barely a deity or a demigod. Transformers, I was more or less a god, if not a demigod. Here, I'm barely in the podium of divinity, if that. But I'm holding my own against this. A deeper level of observation and immediate adaptation are brought into this battle, the more multitasking a player would do or be doing to extend survival. I will probably attempt it in time when I feel comfortable to try for a solo completion time, which may happen more or less during a state of complete clarity, but I'm in no rush to do it right now.
This could happen at any moment.
There was a long learning curve in the mechanic outline here. The first time I ever completed against the Behemoth when the Legendary Beast first came out, that was way later, but it was like a team outline of about like 32 minutes and some change. I want to say maybe around 30-40 seconds. It was with some old friends from the Transformers community that were long since retired playing the gameplay, but I ran into them out here in Monster Hunter World. Props go out to Taganagi, Beast Overlord 4, and Escaflowne and Ikiba for the huge showdown completion that we had against the Behemoth when he was first out, because we enjoyed spamming that shit, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. Then I later teamed up with some of the newer hunting friends across PSN and learned the Behemoth hunting in a different sense, which allowed me to gain a lot of experience in fighting against Behemoth and gain a much faster finishing score at around the times of 21 minutes and 20 seconds and 22 seconds and 12 seconds respectively for each of those times. There were a total of 4 of them, but those 2 I can remember because there was a total of 3 that happened in the same day that all teetered just short of 25 minutes basically. Thankfully, after grinding it all this time, I got the pieces to complete the armor set, even though I only completed it a hell of a lot less than I actually fought him, because this creature was originally spammed needlessly, and I was lucky to get what it is I could when I could get it. I even earned the chance to have the whole Behemoth armor set, the Draken armor set, plus my cat companion's Moogle set, which I really like that, because I really like Moogles. I really love Moogles. I never attempted to do the Extreme Behemoth, which is basically the equivalent of the Tempered version. It's basically Behemoth Tempered mode, the Extreme Behemoth, but I never did it out of a lack of preparation and honestly a lack of interest in wanting to undergo that level of stress. I mean, think about it. If it took this long to finally get good at facing down Behemoth without having to worry about damage or worrying about my teammates, or my teammates worrying about me, then I don't want to know how long it's going to take to do anything significant with Extreme Behemoth, and I'd rather not know that type of frustration. If the opportunity comes up, if someone wants to drag me along, then I'm up for it, but I'm not going to be overly ecstatic about it. I'll just do it and handle my business like if I was fighting the regular one and just be mindful of my mantles. Holy crap! I didn't think he was that weak. Vaal Hazak. The Effluvia buildup that saps HP over time to a lock-in point. That's really the only hard part about Vaal that was hard to work around for the longest time to get fair to moderate finish times against him. If not just beating Vaal period at first. His presence creates a whole lot of dust pockets in the air that just drains health as you fight. And it becomes more unpredictable with his pattern the more dust is in the air. This lowers the chances of restoring a lot of health or using the null berries to negate the Effluvia peak buildup effects. A Dragon Glaive was what I've been using for the longest time against him, as Dragon was a weakness element, but it wasn't a strong weakness element. I was originally using the Nergigante Insect Glaive against him before I could find different variations. When I was using the Dragon Glaives against him, it was only limited with the varying amount of combat results due to the toxic buildup management. That was before I had any builds that I have now that allow me to not worry about the Effluvia buildup as much, because I had to worry about constantly getting HP and potions here and there while keeping DPS up, which stuns time. I was using the incorrect build. Even though I was doing damage against him, I was using the incorrect builds against him. I knew fire was a strong weakness, or weak point to pinpoint against him, but I had no effective fire-based weaponry at the early times. The investment for the Rathalos Charge Blade and the Odogaron Insect Glaives were in the early process of being saved up for at those times. A lot of this would cost easily tens of thousands of dollars. Not invested in the gameplay, but tens of thousands of money in the game that you have to actually save up for in-game. So after a while, it could only be easily sought out in time from a committed investment. So I had to save up money, I had to grind. I had to save up parts, and make sure that I'm following in the right trees in order to end up where it is I'm ending up at, to get those right weapons, and to make sure that they are the correct weapons I need. And I will say though, as expected, it did get a little easier over time, before it got very easy. After enough tries against Vaal Hazak with a lot of poor times or barely any completions, I managed to grind out, and finally grind out his actual full-fledged armor set that greatly works against him. It's one of those very nice perks of an armor set that it actually works against the boss that it's like keenly linked to. The Vaal set negates the whole worry of constantly managing Effluvia drop rate on health and stamina. Instead, it allows for a brief health regen effect for a few instances at a time and a sense of rhythm as you fight, and you do keep fighting. It's this whole dress thing, it's kind of like a funeral dress. Very nice. The only thing that it does not keep consistency with that you need to still keep on hand is your null berries in order to reverse the after effects of each time you may likely get hit by Vaal's Effluvia beam attack, which can be spotted easily a mile away for all the seconds it takes for him to sit there and inhale it all in like a huge puff of smoke, like a cigarette. I grinded Rathalos to the top of completion, and to top off my completion against him for a whole set Charge Blade build that I was confident could be effective against Vaal Hazak. This was a fire charge blade, which unfortunately was also along with a lot of poorly assembled jewel placements at the time, but it became trial and error to see what works between charge blades and elder dragons as opposed to charge blades and regular creatures. Because charge blades, I noticed, do a good amount, if not a huge amount of damage against elder dragons, along with a couple of added bells and whistles that actually help with added DPS stacking. So the charge blades easily knocks the wind out of a lot of them for all the damage that a charge blade can charge up in the process. This here was the charge blade I have that I was using, which was the Rathalos charge blade. It was successful in the creation of a new ideal variation of fire-based charge blade build, centered around a Health Effluvia combination. Continued attempts led to there barely being a need to use potions as often throughout the battle, as hard as that is to believe. And this was like a necessary trial and error, but it paid off to great extents with this build in order to defeat Vaal Hazak at better and constantly improving run times in a strange and, well, once barely explored area of interest. Because there was once upon a time I honestly didn't give a damn about going this far into the Vaal for the Wastelands, but here we are. Somehow I now find myself actually liking this area a lot, mainly because of Vaal Hazak. My fastest time so far defeating Vaal Hazak, which was solo upon regular high rank that I was carrying out at one point, placed at around 12 minutes and 44 seconds using my second complete full charge blade build. On the unfortunate side of this, this is only usable only against Vaal Hazak, as it's created for the whole Vaal area for the whole lower draining effect. The whole lower draining area. This was also the second Elder Dragon I beat not using an Insect Glaive, and it's the first Elder Dragon I fought that I haven't created a full-fledged Insect Glaive build for yet. It's going to take a lot of trial and error in order to find the correct combination for a fire-based Insect Glaive to do the amount of damage I needed to do against Vaal Hazak. I narrowed it down to two fire glaives that might be able to work, which is the Odaran Glaive and the Rathalos Glaive, but the tough part is that the two have two different ways of using their given perk design for each situation or situations. So it's going to take some trial and error, and it's going to take some doing in order to get down the right build to use one of them or both of them, which is time that can easily be managed as time allows elsewhere my focus, and I can continue to take a look into this while I'm doing other things online. Then think and come back to here, try and see if I can go into my lab here at the Gathering Hub and put together said build design and see if it can compute. Rathalos charge blade seals the deal with 11 minutes. Yes, Kirin. This was a tricky Elder Dragon and boss fight to effectively study, in terms of memorizing a set attack pattern the Kirin follows, how the general environment of the Coral Highlands plays out both offensively and defensively each section of the match, thinking about like how the creature is going to be using the terrain to its advantage and how you as the player need to be doing the same thing. The sporadic radius of the Kirin's fast thunder-based attacks and what weapons that have the best approach to the elemental weakness to gain ground as fast as possible without too much damage build-up on your end. It's a lot. It's honestly a lot that was stacking up to try to understand how to combatively, effectively beat Kirin for the longest time. Because I had to do this one in a team setting for a good while before I could effectively learn how to do it on my own. So elements of note revolving around fire and ice in this case for his weaknesses. Predominantly fire. I was successful in the creation of an ideal variation of the fire-based charge blade build I originally created for Vaal Hazak, but this time it was centered around thunder resistance rather than its initial purpose of health effluvia negation mix. This here had rewarded me with the time layout of about 14 minutes and some change, honestly. I was even able to hit upon the same time outline with having face down 2 Kirins at once. Using the Insect Glaive, which was one of 2 fire-based Insect Glaives, I landed a time of about 1646 as the best produced time of all the Kirin runs using an Insect Glaive. Tempered Kirin I have yet to face, and Arc-Tempered Kirin I don't think I'll face again without an honest reason, if I'm being very clear. Well, there you have it. The Elder Dragon challenge is complete. All 10 Elder Dragons defeated in battle. 8 of which were of one-on-one confrontation, unaided to prove my point. Nobody seemed to care about except myself, and disregarded as it didn't concern them outside noting flaws. 2 of that 10 which Elder Dragons that must be fought in a team-based setting in order to thrive in a victorious manner without excess difficulty and frustration. And the 1 Elder Dragon I didn't yet successfully defeat in a one-on-one battle with an Insect Glaive, now officially being an Insect Glaive main. I went through all this trouble because, again, I wasn't going to let others constantly keep telling me what to do, or feel like they have to babysit me in a team-based activity constantly, or tell me that everything I'm doing is wrong on a damn game I want to play in my own time, in my own right, in my own way. That sense of ignorant stupidity drove me away from this game. But my friends wanting me to look beyond that toxicity was what brought me back into trying Monster Hunter World further. Whether or not it's cared about, I succeeded in my task of achieving greatness that I sought from the love I poured into hours of this gameplay to bring me joy and contentment of my achievements as an American player on this game. My goal was to do a lot of difficult crap throughout this game on my own, to learn how to survive and be a highly strong player in my own right without leaning on others too strongly or too often. The first chance something comes up to do something solo, I do it for the principle of one-manning it, because I know with enough hard work I can do exactly what I claim I can do, or likely already did when you were blind. I do everything like a boss because I put in enough hours and work to claim the right to own that attitude and pass on good positivity in the process, to end a cycle of elitism somewhere in the online realm for this stupid community that needs to get smarter. I don't care what others are doing that's amazing. I care about what I do that's awesome, because it's not in anyone else's shadow. I did a lot of all this crap using predominantly Insect Glaives to master my own trade, and Insect Glaives only, with the occasional charge blade here or there. I'm here standing in my own light using a lot of tactics and strategies I learned through mass trial and error to mainboard a weapon type people barely use or think much less of unless it just happened to come from Taroth. I'm sitting on almost a complete collection of the most detailed combat Insect Glaives from all across the platform of the game today, and I worked hard to give these gifts to myself to enjoy as I create a build for each one, exclusive of the 2 builds a good playing friend gave me as a gift that I use when needed. I want to try to create 45 nice Insect Glaive builds, and I can honestly sit there and create each one to an effective margin of interest. I stuck to doing what makes me happy and not others. Other people I play with are barely happy half the time anyway, but they're more so bored. I'm never bored because I'm always working on something to entertain myself or to try something new or test something new. It's not just about using only the strong crap in this game. There are other builds and layouts that came before that are just as effective in different ways that are meant to be explored and studied. I have much on the horizon still to explore myself and test out as I keep expanding build designs and enjoy what comes next. I'm happy playing now because I achieved something that no one else can take away from me. And that's the biggest victory that stands tall in my experiences here.